Welcome everybody. This is Richard. I am here from Repair Room USA, and we're going to go over part 5 of the iPad Rehab course that I took in New York. It was a week-long course. I'm going through every single step and everything they taught us, step by step, almost word for word. That way you know what to expect if you go to one of these electronic repair schools, and you kind of get the pace of how these programs, how these classes are set up. This is Tuesday, day 2 of the class. I think the first day took me about a week to do, a week worth of videos, or at least 3 or 4. This one is on day 2. This is going to be the second part of the course, and we are going to go over CPU, a larger reball and removal. So we're going to start with our tools. Some of our tools that we're going to be using is something like this. This is a spatula. This is going to be for actually lifting up chip and getting it off of there. Now the way that we prepare it is we have to get these actually a lot finer. So if you look at it, let's see if I can get this edge in here. Let me see if I just zoom in here. If you look at these, that's how thick it is. Thick, thick, thick. And you want to get it as thin as you can towards the point. And the way to do that, and this is a little trick that I learned, is you get 2 of your little tweezer sharpening stones. You put some sandpaper on each one, preferably a thin grit, and you just kind of go at it on the tip. And the point of this is you want to get this tip as thin as possible, because that way when you're going to use it, you're going to get underneath of it, and when these balls start to melt, this tip is going to slide in there. That's when you know, when it's sliding in there like that, that's when you know that you are ready to turn and pop it off. So you want these tips to be nice and thin, so when they get through here, it's not so bad. Now another thing you need to know is you need to have an attack plan on how you're going to get to this chip. The attack plan that we're going to use today is that we're going to approach it from the side right here. Since there's no components right here, we're going to go in like that, and then we're going to snap it up. Now if you look at this chip, now is this one of the chips that has underfill? Can you see the traces going underneath the chip? So this chip has no underfill. And also, if you look at it, this chip is not one of those glass chips. Right here. This is actually not a glass chip. This is a much tougher chip. Now this is the baseband CPU. Okay, this is an iPhone 6 Plus. So if we go into ZXW and we go into, let's see, all right, we go into ZXW and we go into iPhone 6 Plus. This is the iPhone 6 Plus. We are actually right here, baseband RF. Okay, so this one right here, that's the biggest chip on the board. That is always going to be your CPU, and this is your NAND. It's always going to look like that. It's the same pretty much pattern. So we know this is the chip that we're going to take. Right here we have a capacitor. So if we were to knock this capacitor off, we would probably be okay because we have more capacitors that are doing the same thing. Remember, capacitors smooth. So this is the chip we're going to be removing. We're going to take it in from here. We're going to reball it. That's the lesson that we learned when we came in on Tuesday for the second half. So remember our base temperature. Our base temperature was 360, 60 on the wind, on the airspeed. Now we need to get a tip that's going to line up or match with our CPU. So if we get this tip right here, that would probably be just about right. Or I could probably use this tip, but that doesn't quite cover the CPU. I want to use something that it's going to be covering the CPU. Now, remember, when you're holding this and you're holding it at an angle, what's going to be the hottest part of the board? The hottest part of the board is always going to be this part. This side is always going to be the hottest because that is where the metal is closer. If I could hold it straight like this, it'd be more ideal. But that's a lot harder to do because remember, we only have so much distance in between the microscope and the actual chip. So we get our wand ready. Now on something like this, we're probably going to be using, we want to go in here quick and fast. So this is an iPhone 6 and we're going to be using, let's use 70 Air 385. Alright, and we're going to be using some flux. And flux always helps with the process of loosening things up, especially with solder. So if you're not using flux, you're not soldering. Use the spatula to go under here and then flip it up. So let's get to work. So you want to kind of start further away. Get everything warmed up a little bit. Slowly, you just want to like warm up the board. And remember, we're going to be coming in from this side. You don't want to touch the chip. I'm probably going to be ending up knocking off that CPU. Alright, you see how everything is nice and warm? You flip it up, and that's it. Now if you notice the time that it took, that's how you know that you're using about the right temperature. And the only way that you're going to know if you're using the right temperature is by experimenting. Getting junk motherboards, taking chips off, putting them back on, and practicing. Eventually, once you think you're good enough, you're going to get working motherboards, take chips off, put them back on, and see if they still work. If they still work, you're ready to move up to regular board repair. Let's see how this chip looks. This is our chip. If we look closely, here, we're going to add some flux to the board. Alright, I'm going to go in with my iron. And what I want to do is I'm going to add some low temperature solder. This is my regular solder that I use. This is leaded. I want to get a nice ball of it. And basically I'm just running a ball over all these points, kind of refreshing them. Okay, that is basically, I am downgrading the metal a little bit. I'll get rid of my ball. Now I want a dry iron as much as I can get it. Or I might be able to use a bigger tip iron. Let's use my Hacko. And basically what I'm doing is I'm using a dry iron and I am knocking some of these tips off, re-drying my iron. When I'm doing this, I want to use as much fresh solder as I can. I'm just basically using a dry iron and I'm going over these tips. Now these things are sensitive, so you want to try to get this done as fast as possible. I'm just kind of knocking some of the tips of these board and just pulling these up, pulling up these little balls, but you have to be gentle. You don't want to be rough at all. And you want to be comfortable. Get your tip in position. Let me get a little bit of braid. Go in here. And I'm going to be very light. Get a clean tip. There's plenty of flux on my braid. And I just kind of lightly going over and just tapping, just knocking some of these balls down, and it's actually sticking to the board. And that's it. Now if you notice, this right here got knocked off. So we can either leave them knocked off or we can just put them back into position. Let's clean the area up a little bit. Let's see what we got. So I use a dry Q-tip, get most of the flux off. So let's look at the actual CPU. This is where we're actually going to be reballing. So we got to clean this off. Put this in a chip holder. Like that. Alright, so we want to be gentle and we want to kind of knock these little balls off. So you put plenty of flux. And get my handy little iron. And I'm just kind of going over. And just quickly as I can, just knocking these balls down as best I can. So what makes it easier is you get a low temperature solder. So you want to decrease the actual temperature in here. So let me add a little bit of paste. Just want to get a little bit. Put it on there. Get my syringe, and then what I want to do is I'm just kind of getting this, making a ball. I'm not really touching the actual CPU. I'm just running this little bead over everything. And what I'm doing is I'm lowering the temperature of the little beads. You want to use plenty of flux on here. So I am combining the lower temperature drying my iron. Make sure you got a nice dry iron. Let me reduce the temperature on this thing. I got this thing way too hot. And I'm going in here and I'm just cleaning the balls off. Just tap, tap, tapping. I'm trying not to touch the CPU as much as possible. I just kind of going over those balls and just kind of grabbing them and pulling them off. That's all I want to do. Just kind of knock those balls off. Make sure I have a dry iron. This is why people ask so much money to work on these phones, because this is very laborious, not easy to do. So let's look at our job so far. Let's see what we got. A little bit of alcohol. Clean it up a little bit. Let's see. All you want to do is just get the majority of the high balls off of there. You're not trying to scrub it. You're just basically going over it, tap, tap, tapping, and getting that chip and pulling those things off. And the only way to do that is to look at it from the side, trying to see if you got those balls knocked down as much as possible so you can make new ones. It looks like I knocked them down, maybe a little bit more on this side. And that's the thing with this. You don't want to touch this chip that much. You want to try to get it in and out, in and out. In and out. You want to have a clean iron, and you just kind of tapping these. You want to get solder on your iron and then off. Okay, I think that's enough. Get some alcohol. Get my cat wipes. I don't know. Ahorita salgo. Estoy haciendo algo. All right. Let's see. So let's take it out of this thing. I'm gonna try to clean this as much as I can. Get all the flux. Clean the edges. Clean all these edges. Get the chip nice and clean. For Reball, get this chip nice and clean. Clean the sides. Clean the back. Alright, now let's look at it. Now now how good of a job did we do? Get that out of the way of knocking these things down. Did we do a pretty good job? Looks like we did. I mean, there's going to be a little bit on there, but I think we knocked them pretty much down. Alright, that looks pretty good. I still see a lot of dirt on the sides. We want to try to clean that up as much as possible. Alcohol is your friend. Okay. Now, get a little chem wipe. Now it's time for Reball. So I got the stencil here. And let's see which one is this baseband CPU. So that is how you line it up. Right there. That is an awfully high mark right there, but that should be fine because the paste won't go in there. So we pretty much got it lined up the way we want. Now there's a couple ways you can do it. You can actually tape it. So you would need a little piece capped on tape, and you would have to stick it to the back of this chip, and then the tricky part is to get the stencil to line up and not stick to your fingers. Okay, I think that's good. I want to kind of get this a little bit better wipe. One last clean. There you go. Hold it. Alright, now this is the trick. You want to get the stencil. You want to look through the holes and you want to line it up as best you can. Without it getting stuck. Almost. This is the hardest part, is getting this thing lined up without it actually sticking to your stencil. Stay on the board, buddy. Alright, stay there. Let's get you on there. Get you lined up. That's not the right one. That's the right one. So I'm looking at the corner I'm lining it up as best as I can. That's not right. That's not right because I'm missing a whole bunch of squares. Did I turn this thing again? Alright, let's try this again. This is the hardest part. So you don't have to tape it. So I'm looking it through it. Okay. Did I get it? How does that look? That looks pretty dang good. Now, I see a little problem here. There's something in my little hole. Let's try to get it out of there. There's some kind of something right there. I think it went underneath the stencil. So hopefully that won't be any problems. Alright, that one is sort of there. Okay. So I got everything in there. Now you want to get your favorite curved tweezers, if I can find mine. Where's our done? What did I do with my favorite tweezers? Here they are. So the trick is when you're pasting this, you want to hold it down and paste. You want to always keep pressure on the stencil when you are pasting. The tape will help a little bit. So I get my 183 paste. Now I've left this container open before, so it's actually nice and dry. Or I could use this. And basically I'm going to go through here and I'm going to paste. So I'm going to apply it like that and then go over and sweep. Okay? So I get a little bit of paste. It's nice and dry. The drier the better. I apply it on my, put some pressure on it. And I'm going to go over, and actually this paste is really wet. That's not what you want. You want to try to use as dry paste as possible, because the wetter the paste, the more problems you're going to have. That paste is super wet. I mean, you want it to actually be caked up. This is probably not going to work, but this will be a good learning opportunity. And if I mess it up, that's even better. Alright, holes look pretty good. Everything looks intact. Now we're going to heat this up, and we're not going to use our normal temperature, which is what? 330, 60? 360, 30. We're going to use 330, 60. I'm going to hold it down, and you don't want stuff all over your tweezers. Hold it down. We're going to slowly bring in some air. Slowly just heat up the stencil, kind of blowing over it across from it a little bit. Keep your pressure. You've got balls that are forming now. Alright, you want to hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Let it dry up. Make sure it's nice and dry. Clean this off a little bit. Now is your opportunity to see how you have done. So we're going to look at everything. Now you can actually, this is another trick you can do. You can actually go over with a blade and see if you have any high spots. And actually shave them down a little bit. Like that. Any high spots will get shaved. Now that right here was an empty spot, so you don't have to worry about that. But everything else looks okay. So let's actually take it out from the stencil and let's see how bad we did. Now that paste was way too dry. Usually what I do is I let it sit out. Oh, wow. Let's see what happened here. Alright, let's see how bad we did. This stencil looks terrible. So if we look, alright, looks okay. Let's put this in a chip holder and it's got enough flux on it already, so you don't have to put any more on. But what we do have to do is we have to reform these balls. Alright. And if you look, I don't know. It looks like I'm going to have a lot of high spots, but let's try it. And get our air again. Same temperature. And you just kind of want to go over it and make sure everything is shiny again. Just slowly bring in the heat. And what you want to do is you want to reform these balls. And you want them all shiny, all nice and round. They're all shiny. Now there's a problem. Up there, you see these two that have conjoined together? The only way to fix that is we get a blade, preferably a clean blade. And we have to go in here. Let me see if I can fix this. Oh, I'm shaking a lot. And I actually have to cut into it and try to reform this ball here. Yeah, it's actually burning my finger. Ow. Oh, I made it worse. Hold on. I can save this. Where did I go to this? Alright, let's see if I can save it. I am shaky today. Wow. Okay. Whew. Wow, shaky. I guess I should eat today. So, let's try this again. Let's decrease the air a little bit. I want to go nice and slow. Now, I want to blow it a little bit from the side, from this side. I want to kind of get it back on its pad. There it is. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Do not join with that one. There it is. Reform all the balls. Alright. And that's how you deal with separate problems. Now, are we done? Probably not. If you want to cool this chip off, wait till it cools a little bit. Alright, let's clean this chip off. So now we're going to see how good of a reball that we did. And if we did a good reball, I'm just basically cleaning off the chip, clean off the sides. Let's focus this in a little bit. I do see some, what is that? Okay, that's just some junk. Alright, what is that red stuff on here? So what we're trying to get, and what we're looking for here, is we're trying to get some even balls. So the only way to do that is we get our chip and we look at it from the side. How do those balls look? Wow, I better eat something. Let's see here. Are my balls pretty even? Am I happy with that? It looks like some of them are a little bit higher. You can get away with a little bit higher, but not with a whole bunch higher. You want to look at these, go around, and you're trying to see if all of these are about the same size. You don't want one that's super big and one that's super small, because when these melt and go back on its board, then you're going to have high spots and your chip won't settle down very well. So it looks like this one's good. So we want to prepare this board and I gotta knock these are way high over here. All these are super high. I gotta knock all those down. So I gotta add some flux. Come on, let's iron. And I need to knock these down. This is super hard to do. So you want to try to knock these down as best you can. Get them flat. And the only way you're going to do that is going around lightly tapping and just pulling solder onto your iron and then going and cleaning it off and then repeat the process. Just kind of knocking these tips down. So when this chip goes on there, it will go on there flat. Now, you're not going to be able to remove everything, but you can remove a lot. All right. Clean it up. And the only way you're really going to be able to know if this was successful is by getting working boards, taking chips off, and practice putting them back on. Am I happy with this? No. I think I could probably get some more of this off right around here in the middle. But I think I've done enough damage already. This is just practice. I don't know what this board went through or actually, how many times it's been worked on before actually I've worked on it. These are just junk, different boards that I found. I just decided to use this one because I don't need it for anything. Alright. Now, where's pin number 1? Well, I don't know. We're going to go back into the ZXW. And I'm going to look at this. And remember, pin number 1 will be right here. So pin number 1 is at this corner. So that's where we're actually putting pin number 1 at. If I hold the board with that to the left. So that's going to be pin number 1 on that corner. Pin number 1 is going to be there. You want to use a tiny bit of flux. And what I want to do is I want to get my heating iron and spread it out. Spread a thin coat out. And that's probably too much. I got my brushes. And I just want a thin layer over this. Not a lot. You put too much, it's going to swim away. I get my chip. So the chip is going to go in here like that. Dot to the right corner. And this is not something that we did on the first day, but this is just something that I want to practice on and try. And now the hard part is getting this to actually not to be lined up, and I can't do it while I'm shaking like this. But you want it to be lined up as much as you can on their dots. If you see, those dots are right there. Right there. So I think that looks about right. Alright. We're going to use the temperature that we used to take this off. I'm going to go in with 385. Wind speed 60. And let's try this. Let's see if we can actually get it to go back in its little spot. So I want to start slow. I want to come in from the side. Gradual heat. Very slow. And you're waiting for it to bubble. You see it bubbling? You see how it just ran right into like its position? You're gonna see it bubble, 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 flex, count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, done. How well did we do? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's see. Ouch. It's hot. It's very, very hot. Let's see if I can get in here. No, if you look closely at that, it looks like that. There's no dot on that first corner, so it's hard to see. But it looks like the the CPU is lined up correct. Now one thing that I didn't do is show you a little secret that I was taught. And when you're taking these off, a good little trick to use, put these back, is you can actually get your CPU, and before taking it off, you can actually put a little mark like this. Just a little mark. You don't have to go too deep. You just want to get a little bit of mark on the PCB before you take it off. And then that way, right there, when you take it off, you have an alignment that you can use when you put it back on. So, that is what we learned in class. We did not put it back on. We basically just took it off. We never really put on a chip that big. I should have marked it before I did it. I did pull off some pads, but that is something that happens, and that's why these things are very delicate, and they take a lot of practice. Those pads didn't look like they're that important. They look like ground pads, but you don't know until you actually fire it up. Thank you very much. Please, if you have any comments, any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Leave them in the comments, and check me out next video.